All right, good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Orange Chamber of Commerce, I'm Berkenda, and welcome to our March installment of Eggs and Issues. Thank you guys all so much for coming. We have a couple people to welcome today. First, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming to our Mayor, Dan Slater. Thank you for joining us. We also have City Manager Tom Casella. And thank you all for coming. Okay, this weekend and this weather. I mean, we had our Orange Plaza art walk on Saturday, and for a second I thought it was going to get rained out. And as you guys know, it started at 1 p.m. and the rain stopped at 1 p.m. Who got to attend? Anyone here? Did you guys have a great time? Thank you again to our sponsors, all the businesses involved. You guys have no idea how much work it is. Maybe you have some idea of how many. It was, what, 20? Connie, was it 20 businesses? About 20 businesses, so 20 vendors. So all the businesses, all the art vendors, and the community, thank you again for making that another great event. We so appreciate you. And with that, we're going to get into it. So before I do, though, always remember this is an open format. Our guest is here for you. It is my pleasure to introduce Sheriff-Coroner Don Barnes. Before we get into some questions, I just want to read a very brief bio about you, if that's okay.
Very brief.
Very brief. So brief. So brief. Your team knows you. Sheriff Don Barnes was elected the 13th Sheriff-Coroner for Orange County in November 2018. He began his law enforcement career at the Orange County Sheriff's Department in 1989. Sheriff Barnes leads a department of approximately 4,000 employees. The men and women of the Sheriff's Department provide patrol services for approximately 800,000 residents, operate one of the nation's largest county jail systems, manage the Orange County Crime Lab, conduct criminal investigations, and provide training services at the Orange County Sheriff's Regional Training Academy. The sheriff serves as the county's mutual aid coordinator and is responsible for emergency management. During his tenure as sheriff, he has focused on initiatives aimed at fighting crime, enhancing school safety, implementing programs in the jail to reduce recidivism, and increasing efforts to stop trafficking of deadly narcotics. Sheriff Barnes, thank you again for coming. We know you're so busy.
This is the most important thing I have going on today.
Yay! Oh my gosh! We feel very special.
It's all downhill after this.
Well, the last time we chatted was July 2020 on Zoom. I think that was one of our first Zoom Eggs and Issues. I mean,
it's hard to believe it's been 4 years since the COVID outbreak.
Right.
And we learned a lot about ourselves through that time. What I love about that period, everybody went to Zoom or Teams or some other format. And what I hear from people afterwards when I meet them is they say, I didn't realize how tall you were. And, on Teams, everybody's monitor height.
Everyone's the same height, yes.
It's like that Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares theme that you have.
Yes. No, definitely. And I had forgotten.
I'm sorry, Brady Bunch was a comedy from the 70s. Probably have never heard of it.
You're so funny. I actually had forgotten how tall you were until you walked in this morning. I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, you are very tall. It's been a long time since I've seen you in person. Well, I have a lot of weighty questions for you, but I did hear something good, so let's start with that. Your team.
We're going to start with good and then bad to follow.
We're gonna go crime is kind of heavy. We have a lot of heavy topics.
There are some heavy topics.
But
a lot
first,
of moving parts right now. Yes.
Wanted to just give you a congratulations. We learned that you have been elected as the Vice President for Homeland Security for Major County Sheriffs Association.
Yes.
What is that?
Thank you. Major County Sheriffs of America is there are 3,100 sheriffs nationally.
Okay.
The 100 sheriffs that represent Major County Sheriffs of America are the sheriffs that have populations of 500,000 or more.
Okay. And
those 100 sheriffs of the 3,100 actually represent about 40% of the nation's population. So it's a very small group, but a very influential group. The position that I have been elected to is responsible for Homeland Security for that group, but also represents, I think, broader law enforcement with the FBI, DHS, Office of National Drug Control Policy, and others that I have the privilege of working with, and hopefully using the influence of my office to start changing some of the narratives and understanding of some of the bigger challenges that we're all facing on a national basis. I just got back from a meeting with FBI last week. Next week, I leave to meet with DHS. I'm the keynote speaker for a White House program, Office of National Drug Control Policy, next week. I travel 4 times in the next 2.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
On this front. And I love the opportunity because I think if you look at where we are today, it's a long answer to a very simple question, but I think where we are today, it's troubling to me. We are 23 years removed from 9/11, and I think the risk, the threat horizon we're facing in this country has put us back to September 10th of 2001. We are less safe today than we were 23 years ago.
That's not good.
And it's not a good thing, but if you go back 23 years, we had a lot of advantages. We were trying to keep people from getting access to jumbo jets and flying them into buildings, and we had the benefit of a very large border called the Atlantic Ocean versus adversarial groups that want to do us harm. And that's all been negated over the last several years as a result, some bad policy, border policy, and then we have fentanyl, drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, homegrown violent extremists, all these things that have, not to mention cyber, which is the one thing that really keeps me up at night. We have all these disparate threats that are interrelated and much bigger than what we were dealing with just 2 decades ago.
Right. That was supposed to be my fun question.
Okay, well, I guess, thank you for having me. I guess I'm good to go.
That was a light question.
I will tell you, though, that's a lot of heavy and really sounding negative, but I'm going to tell you in Orange County, we do a lot of things to mitigate those exact things. A lot of great programs that we've implemented here, and I think a lot of them that should be emulated on a national platform, on a national stage. And that's the benefit that I get to take when I go to these groups and talk about some of the programs we created and some of the strategies we've been implementing here and some of the great things we're doing in our jails that really are changing the narrative nationally. And I'll cover a couple of those probably as we get into some of the questions. I know you have questions for me.
I do have some.
I am by definition a politician because I got elected to office. I can keep going. I can keep going all morning.
If you want to carry the meeting, no, I have some questions.
Sure.
Let's talk about crime. Okay. And now we're going to go bleak and looking at some of the stats, that were presented by your office, crime is exponentially high. And it's very high. So what are we doing as a sheriff's department to proactively engage the community, and what are some things we can look forward to seeing from your team? I know that there is what is it called? Sorry. The real-time crime center is coming, and I know that was grant approved, so we can talk about that.
I can tell you I could probably go an hour on this question alone, but I won't. I'll be very succinct. Crime is going up. It's a result of bad policy. If I asked you in 2014 when you saw on the ballot Prop 47, do you remember what the title of Prop 47 is? Tom, you can't answer, so I know you know.
No, that's cheating. He can't answer.
It was a Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act that did nothing to make our schools and neighborhoods safer. It was the largest decriminalization effort in California's history. The 2 largest categories of crime that we deal with in policing is property crime and drug crime, and made most of those categorically from felonies to misdemeanors. If you don't know how the criminal process works, to go to prison, you have to be convicted of a felony. You can't go to prison on a misdemeanor. And this is really about a depopulation effort of our state prison systems, decarceration of the state prison system that was over 100,000 residents and being sued for ADA and mental health issues within the state prison system. So you solve that problem by getting people out of the prison at the expense of the public. So over time, we've had these huge increases in drug issues that we're dealing with in the community. We have huge increases in property crime that we're dealing with now. It's manifested 10 years later into these huge shifts on property crime. So we're trying to undo that. There's an initiative coming up to undo the effects of Prop 47 on the ballot. It's requiring signatures. I'm supporting that effort. So keep an eye out for that. But our Real-Time Operations Center, Real-Time Crime Center is something I've been working towards for about a decade. The one benefit we do have on the Homeland Security front, it's now really about all crimes, all hazards, is we have our own fusion center in Orange County, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center. It's been in existence prior to 9/11, back when they were called terrorism early warning groups. There were 3 in the nation at that time. New York, LA, and Little Orange County had its own. We've been in this environment for counterterrorism for well over 2 decades. When 9/11 happened, 2004, 2005 started the Fusion Center network in the nation. 80 fusion centers. Orange County is the only county in the entire nation that has its own and manages its own fusion center for counterterrorism activities. Over time, it's manifested into what we call all crimes, all hazards. They'll do major homicide investigations, narcotic investigations, things that we have. We had the Geneva Presbyterian Church incident that happened 2 years ago, the active shooter in the church. It was the Okayak that located the car through LPR, license plate readers, the pattern of life of the individual as he traveled from Las Vegas to here, dealt with Las Vegas Metro, got search warrants issued and served in his residence there to find evidentiary value for prosecuting that case. So it's much more robust. But they were in a little tiny area. Thank you, Orange, by the way, and Orange PD, because they loaned us a deployment station that's up off of Santiago Canyon by the college that was not being used as a deployment station for the police department. And we've been using that for over a decade at, I think, $1 a month, Tom? Yes. So, and because it has a mutual benefit. You benefit from it, we benefit from it, and we had it. But we needed a bigger home for them. So moving them and our crime analysis group and our dispatch center, we created a national model for a real-time operations center. It's the only location in the nation that has all three of those components physically in one location where they can look at things happening in real time. Not just for the county benefit, the region, the state, the nation, but international benefit. They have solved crimes on counterterrorism or terrorism activities in other states. Our investigative teams have solved these things here in Orange County, that they take this information, the FBI, adopt it for prosecution and do these great things. But it's not intended, it's not intended just to be a sheriff's resource. It's available for the municipal police departments if they choose to put personnel at this location. I built it. The framework's there. All we need are the resources. And if the city places an analyst or a TFO, a terrorism liaison officer there, then we get the benefit as a region to look at crime in real time using technology and communications and other things to make sure that we're looking at the county holistically, not just disparately between city border to city border.
Right.
It'll potentially be the greatest ability to control and reduce crime in real time by looking at some of these bad actors that come in from other counties that prey upon the residents of Orange County.
Now with that, so you mentioned that other departments would be able to be involved. So you're thinking maybe the other police departments from the different cities within the county?
Yes.
Okay, and is it going to be in Santa Ana?
It's actually in the city of Tustin. It's right by the blimp hangar that was the blimp hangar before it burnt to the ground. But it's right next to there, across Red Hill from my academy, and it's up and operating. We are populating it now, and within probably the end of the year, this thing will be very robust and doing
That's
great
exciting.
work. It's very exciting.
That online.
That's my legacy project. There's one thing I've wanted to accomplish. That was it. So I'm done, and I'm not leaving office. I'll find something else to occupy my time.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for bringing that online. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Fentanyl, that's a topic that we are, unfortunately, in this group know all too well. It's something we speak about with almost every guest. And I know fentanyl is something that your team is working on. Looking at those numbers, also kind of bleak. I think I saw that, just kind of thinking of numbers, like around 16,000 pills captured in like 2021 and like 600,000 in 2023.
It is.
That was a huge jump.
It's a huge jump. So I run the Orange County Crime Lab, internationally accredited crime lab. It's our crime lab that recognized the first presence of fentanyl west of the Mississippi. Oh. That's back in 2014. And knowing how trends start, we got out ahead of it. We created an naloxone program that we deployed in 15. Naloxone is an opioid antagonist. It blocks the neuroreceptors and the depression of the breathing, which is what opioids do and what fentanyl does. You don't overdose on fentanyl. What it does is it suppresses your breathing to you basically suffocate. You stop breathing because it suppresses the respiratory system. So naloxone will block the fentanyl that allows your breathing to return. And that's the benefit of it. Fentanyl, I was a drug expert many years ago, a much younger version of me. But fentanyl, we look at narcotics, it's called the half-life. What period of time that narcotic or drug reduces by 50%, and then 25%, and then 1/8, and then 1/16. Fentanyl's half-life is 15 minutes. So you're literally racing against the clock to block the impact or effects of fentanyl to have the naloxone become the dominant substance, and then breathing returns. So every one of our deputies, every one of our crime lab, crime scene investigators, everybody in the coroner's office deploys with fentanyl in their possession. We have saved over 600 lives since we deployed the fentanyl program, which is very important because if you look at the 107,000 lives lost in 2022 reported in a 12-month period, that doesn't count the lives saved that we saved with fentanyl. That number would be much higher, not for the national programs we deployed in fentanyl. But regarding the seizures, which is very telling, back when we first started focusing on fentanyl, the first year we seized 0.4 of a pound. This is about 2015,
Okay.
16. In 2023, we seized over 800 pounds of pure fentanyl. It's exponentially higher. That's millions and millions of potential lethal doses of fentanyl.
The doses, I think, of those are so small.
It's if you took a sugar packet on your table and dumped that sugar packet out, 2 little granules of that sugar would represent a lethal dose of fentanyl. It's very, very toxic. 50 times more toxic or lethal than heroin. 100 times more toxic than morphine. So it's very, very deadly. And of course, we have the pills that are coming across the border. Over 850,000 pills my department seized in 2023. That's a large increase year to year. I'll tell you a little bit about the pills. If there's any one thing message, if you have kids, neighbors, nieces, nephews, whatever it might be, young adults, anybody who might be experimenting with narcotics, and this is information reported routinely that is completely inaccurate. It's not a fentanyl-laced pill. Some people say they lost their life to a Xanax laced with fentanyl or OxyContin laced with fentanyl. There's no pharmaceutical quality in those pills. It is a binding agent with fentanyl pressed, colored to look like Xanax, OxyContin, or some opioid or some pharmaceutical. There's no pharmaceutical quality in there. Now, to make that even more complicated, they make these pills look really good. If I put 2 pills next to each other, one real, one fake, you could not pick out the fake one. In fact, oftentimes you'll pick the fake one because it looks more legitimate than the real one.
Wow.
They're really good at making them look legitimate. But what the cartels are not good at is blending the chemicals. As a county coroner, we are deep in data. We have a lot of death investigation data and toxicology, and those who lose their lives to fentanyl are at as high as 33 to 36 times the lethal level. So people are taking a pill, flatlining. In fact, if we had naloxone, there's not enough naloxone to save them from that lethal of a dose.
Oh, wow.
Because it's that heavy of a dose.
That's in one pill?
In one pill.
Oh, my gosh.
So here's the thing. What I've tried to tell young adults or kids, and this is where kids are presumably playing Russian roulette with these pills, DEA reports that of the pills that are being sold by not pharmacists but on the black market, by dealers, I'm going to round up. It's over 99%. Let's just call it 100% of the time it is a fentanyl pill, not a pharmaceutical. So it's not 99 out of 100. It's actually over 99 times. The odds are, if you buy a pill from somebody not from a pharmacist, it's going to be a fentanyl pill, and you're taking your life in your own hands. It may be 1/8 because they're not always over. The next time might be 8 times because of the way these cartels are making these pills. But I'm going to give you a little bit of hope.
Okay.
So we have a great program that we're teaching called Above the Influence. Mm-hmm. It's a science-based program. It's not a scared straight program. We're in 40 schools. It's life choices, how to make better life choices, how to deal with stressors with our kids. If you have suicidal ideations, how to get help. It's a great program, 6 weeks that we do with these kids. It's tremendously successful. It's being tested.
For 5th and 6th graders, right?
5th and 6th graders.
Okay.
But beyond that, and some of the efforts we've had, as the state continued to go up, the state went up 3% in fentanyl-related deaths in 2022, which is the last measured year. Orange County declined. We went down 6%. So that's a 9% delta between the state and Orange County. And we'd be one of the only counties that actually started to see this trending back down. It's because of the very intentional efforts we're having to educate people and consume these narcotics. By the way, I have 6 narcotic strategies in the Sheriff's Department. We have 2 street teams. We still have street teams, which is very difficult when you're running narcotics operations with post-Prop 47. So typically you get somebody who's a user, you get their local dealer, you get the supplier, you get the cartel, you work it back up. Very difficult now. We have a Pacific Ocean border. People forget the Pacific Ocean is a western border. Right. We run a program on behalf of the federal government called Operation Stone Garden. We have boats that are staffed by our tactical teams, our SWAT teams, that go out on the waterways. They have their dual purpose. They're sworn as federal officers. They can board boats coming in, pleasure craft or interseed Ponga boats coming up. I've got a highway interdiction team. If you're ever going down to San Diego and see an Orange County Sheriff's vehicle by the checkpoint, that is our deputies that are getting narcotics coming north, guns and money, and now precursor chemicals going back down to the border that are being trafficked. A parcel interdiction team that is going through John Wayne Airport getting commercial packages coming through. the airport, and we have a majors team called the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Initiatives, which is the program I'm speaking to in about a week back in D.C., which is a majors team working the cartels here in Orange County. And that's a multi-agency collaborative with other agencies participating in that as well. I'm very proud of our efforts.
We appreciate the efforts, for sure.
You.
Thank you. I think I'll take a moment for questions.
Did I just ruin your whole script?
No. Perfect.
So with all that's going on, how would you assess overall gang activity in Orange County? Like back in the 70s when I was growing up, those type of gang activity.
So the question was, how are we dealing in Orange County with gang activity? We'd had a really good suppression of gangs at the end of the 90s into the 2000s. And there's a lot of factors that play into that, by the way. We had a very strong economy. People getting out of prison could find employment. All these things are in this larger ecosystem that drive this. A lot of the older gang members wanted out. We served gang injunctions. A lot of them actually liked that because it gave them the permission or the ability to get out of a gang because they had the legal prohibition to keep them from joining gangs. All of those are very important. The cartels are driving gangs activity in Orange County. Now it's almost gang agnostic. It doesn't matter about the race issues between gangs. As long as you're participating in the narcotics activity, it's gang agnostic. So it's mostly driven by fentanyl. Methamphetamine is still the largest by quantity drug trafficked across the border. The one thing we're not seeing come across the border anymore is marijuana. You know why? Because the cartels are growing illegally in Central California. Those grows are mostly controlled by the cartel. The cartel's not going to walk away from the $1 billion business and let some mom and pop shop just start growing weed and let that go. So they're controlling a lot of that. China's getting involved now in the narcotics trade because of the exchange of money laundering that takes place. And so they're exchanging proceeds for precursor chemicals that are brought in to go to the border to make fentanyl. So gang activity is still actively involved in that, and they're also actively involved in the property crime issue. If you look at how these, and that's mostly the South American theft groups coming from Chile, which, by the way, we resolved because I talked to Congress about that issue. We dealt with a consulate in Los Angeles. They woke up Chile and said, you can't keep sending these people here without vetting them properly through Interpol. They're taking these people at face value when they said, we're not criminals, put them on a plane. And that's not the deal we made. So I actually was advocating for rescinding the ESTA visa program with Chile unless they fixed it. We're told it's been fixed, but a lot of people are already here within the United States. So that makes a big issue, not to mention the porous border that we have that's causing other issues as well. The issues with the organized gangs on property crime is very prolific. If you have neighborhood watch programs, please keep them very active. I know that I speak for Orange PD and my good friend Dan Adams and the previous chief, Tom Casella. You're not bothering the police department, the sheriff's department. You see something suspicious on your street, 3 people sitting there for no reason. Please let us go out and check that out. I'd much rather have our deputies or officers do that than have to respond to a residential burglary that occurred 2 hours prior, because we want to make sure we have the ability to go out and intervene properly. But I will tell you, we're really, really good at catching them. We caught several of the Chilean burglary crews one in Irvine, my good friend Anthony Quill, several in the Back Bay, Newport Beach, because I investigated teams that go where they go or watch them when we caught them. We just broke up a very large burglary ring that was multi-jurisdictional within Orange County. A gang out of Los Angeles coming in and preying on residential areas. What I love most about this is that we had arrest warrants for 20 individuals. Our tactical teams went into Los Angeles and served 5 search warrants and arrest warrants on these locations. And these individuals who we caught, keep in mind, this is the difference between Los Angeles and Orange County. If I get the county to fund a moat, how much better we would be in Orange County. But when our tactical teams arrested them, had the OD green, the tactical uniforms, it says sheriff on the back. These guys literally said, oh, it's Tuesday, you caught us. Okay, you got me handcuffs. Let's see, Tuesday, I'll be out by Thursday, partying by Friday. And our guy said, no, we're Orange County SWAT. And these guys went, oh, expletive. Because What we don't have in Orange County is an overcrowding jail issue. There's not a no vacancy sign on my jail. So we're in LA County where they're released almost immediately, which just perpetuates these crimes because there's no accountability. You either get the fruits of your crime you stole or you get caught and nothing happens. You go right back out. They're still in custody. They're going to remain in custody until they're sentenced and where they go. And I don't early release. So they're going to be there for a long time. And I made sure that they knew that because I want that word to spread. If you come to Orange County, we're going to catch you. We're going to incarcerate you. And you're going to do 100% of your time before you get released.
Thank you.
I got this gentleman here.
You actually touched on it. Thanks for your efforts and our wonderful DA. Orange County is becoming more and more of an island to these insane national and state policies. My question is, how do you interface with places like LA County in your dealings with their law enforcement and trying to keep a balance
Sure.
between what we do and what
So just for the mic, because I don't know everybody here, but the question was, how do we interact or deal with LA County and really any other county? So I'm first vice president of California State Sheriff's Association, take over in June as the president. I chair the technology committee, their DNA committee, and others as well. But it's mostly the relationships. I can tell you that my dealings with some of the chiefs in Los Angeles and also the sheriff's office in Los Angeles, they're frustrated. Everybody who comes to work wants to come to work and do their job. And so there's a little bit of frustration there. I can't hold them accountable for the policies of the state that make us an attractive target. I can educate the public and say, be aware of these things. By the way, ocsheriff.gov, great program called Stay Safe OC. A lot of tips on how to keep yourself and your neighbors safe, including businesses. Mm-hmm. So look there as to keep that. Don't become, you need to be a co-producer of your safety. Don't be an easy target. So educate yourself. But talking to them is one thing. I tell you one benefit that I did have. We went back to 4 years ago, last time we spoke during COVID. Okay. The environment that I've created in my organization across the country, there's huge recruitment and retention issues. I'm actually 40 deputies over. I am fully staffed. We've become an attractive agency for people to want to work. During COVID, I hired hundreds of other people's people. Not that I was targeting them, but they wanted to work in a department where they could be supported and successful. I can create the environment to be successful, but I can't make them come. Our retention is through the roof. And what that means to you as taxpayers, I think this is important. If we had the attrition rate that we were dealing with back when I hired on in the late 80s and early 90s, where 1 in 3 deputies would leave and go to another agency, now I've reversed that and people are coming back to me. If I had to rehire those people that we lost, it would cost me $7 million over the next 5 years just to rehire people because they didn't stay. I'd rather take that $7 million and invest it in training or tools or equipment or programs or intervention strategies or whatever it might be, which is a much better investment in that. For that reason, we have a really high retention rate. I think morale is through the roof in our organization because they really are happy to come to work. When I started here in the late 80s, early 90s, all the fun jobs were the gang enforcement team and narcotics and all these running, gunning positions. You know what the number one position that people are applying and on a wait list to do? My behavioral health team. The people who go out and deal with social program issues, with homelessness and drug addiction and mental illness. That's where the heart of the deputies who work for me, that's where it's at. Thank you.
This is probably a good transition. Question is one word: homelessness.
That's going to be an interesting transition for us. And I think the one thing that people don't understand when we talk about trying to address homelessness, first let me qualify this. We can't arrest our way out of homelessness. It is impossible. You cannot arrest your way out of it. We have phenomenal programs within the Sheriff's Department. I have 40 deputies that do nothing but behavioral health outreach. If you come to my jail, it's program heavy, and you come back, it's not because of my lack of trying to keep you out of custody. If you come back, it's because you didn't want to participate in your own success. But all that said, and I've said this before, I've been striving to get us out of this issue because it's not a law enforcement policing issue to address these. It's by default become our issue. I know the city manager knows this because he has officers here dealing with these issues. I work with Tom Casella when we took on the riverbed back in 2017-18 and successfully navigated the riverbed without any big issues. But people don't become homeless and then become mentally ill, and they don't become homeless and then become drug addicted. It's one or two of those other two issues, or both, that manifest potentially into somebody becoming homeless. So how do you solve that problem? And I've been advocating for, in fact, during COVID and during civil unrest post-George Floyd, I had people telling, the whole defund the police movement that took place. And I told people, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but it's not defunding the police is the solution. It's funding the other social programs that are really the response of the federal government and the state to have these intervention strategies to off-ramp people before they decline into a law enforcement contact that will solve that problem. I can probably reduce my jail population by 20% today if I get people into programs before they end up violating the law and coming into this system, which is the perpetual. I get these people 20 times a year in 3-day increments all year long that just keep on coming through my jail. So I'm a very big advocate for programs. I've been trying to solve this problem. I was on the President's Commission on Social Issues back in 2018-19. And my quote is the first quote in that report under the former president's commission that I was on. And it simply said this: the first person somebody comes into contact with when they're in crisis should not be somebody wearing a uniform, a gun, and a badge. That should only be when it declines into serious criminal conduct that we intervene. We have to fix that problem. I want to cover one more thing real quick. I know I'm getting
Good.
okay. Same topic, post George Floyd, dealing with a national movement to change the criminal justice programs across the state. Ray, who's here, Ray is my partner on all these issues. And we were dealing with two offices of Congress on police reform, national police reform. And the question they were presenting, or the issues they were presenting, was on police use of force. And they talked about what they want to do, what they wanted to accomplish. And when they were done, I said, well, I can solve that problem right now. I can reduce use of force in my department right now by 50%. That's a staggering statement to tell them. And I said, get me out of social work. Half the applications of force by my deputies is somebody in crisis for mental illness or under the influence of substance. If we can solve that problem and remove them out of the system before they enter it, 50% reduction overnight. And crickets on the phone. Because from a political platform, you look at people who are professional politicians, it's not sexy to prevent a problem, it's sexy to solve a problem. And that's not how we should be treating our constituents and their families. We need to get out ahead of these things and solve these problems up front. We have great programs. I'm very concerned about the recent measure passed by the governor, the money grab of Mental Health Services Act money. We're doing great things here in Orange County on our own with the B-Well campus that's right here in the city of Orange, a second B-Well campus in Irvine that's going to be much larger, more robust. Re-entry programming in my jail that's opening up later this year. We were doing great without his interference. This is a money grab, and we are going to be harmed by this long term because they're taking money that's rightfully ours to do our own programs, design our own strategies, implement success. That's going to keep us from doing that and moving forward. And I'm very concerned for that. That's a political money grab by the governor. Sorry if I got a little on a soapbox.
No, that's okay. We have time for one more question.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
I'll go rapid fire. I'll try to get as many as I can.
Angie.
So is there a way to put in the hands of kids like a tester or something so they can test it before they?
So I will tell you that's come up. There are fentanyl test strips, and I was contacted by other partners in government advocating for fentanyl test strips. But I will tell you that will not prevent fentanyl consumption. Fentanyl test strips will be used by addicts to confirm what they bought had fentanyl in it, not the opposite. And I tell you I know that because of the fentanyl-related deaths, and this is where it gets difficult because people think all these deaths are some 8th grade kid that took a pill. That happens, but that's not the majority. Again, as a county coroner, I've got data. And if you look at the people who've lost their lives as a result of fentanyl, over 96% of them are addicts that are known users that are seeking out fentanyl, not the opposite. So we need to prevent both of those things from happening. We need robust treatment. We need off-ramping opportunities. We need education to prevent using in the first place. The fentanyl test strips will not get us what we think it will get us. It's like needle exchange programs, right? It just advocates use. It harms the community. We took tens of thousands of needles off the riverbed when we remediated that. So needle exchange programs don't work if you don't get the other needle back. Fentanyl test strips don't work. It won't get you the outcome you have. Time for more?
Yes, Dara.
Yeah, the access program. The access program seems to have a high threshold of crime before they're diverted into that. Just want to hear your response on that and you're looking to help reduce the threshold. Coming from looking over Be Well and CCRT in Anaheim, some of those programs seem to have very high thresholds where in the OC courts they also have their own recognizance and obviously not the ability to get them either into the jail and they get diverted away from it, and rather than go a program, they just kind of fall right back.
So there's several access programs, but the one you're referring to is the diversion program for adults.
Correct.
Okay, because there's an access program for kids in as well, which is where kids go who are problematic in school. I agree with that, but I don't agree that the thresholds on these programs have actually been lowered across the board because of Prop 47. Drug court was hard to entice people into drug court. To go to jail and eventually even go to prison for a drug crime in this state, you had to really try hard. We had drug court, we had PC 1000, we had Prop 36, we had all these opportunities for people to change their behavior, and it's had the opposite impact now because of Prop 47. And it's called a tail. When you get released from jail, and they call it a tail when probation has monitoring terms for you, most of the people leaving my jail now, by the way, 80% of people convicted for a drug crime would serve their time in jail, not in prison. They didn't go to prison for these felonies back in the day. But now they will say, no, just let me serve my 10 days and release me without a tail, not on probation, because they don't want the accountability terms that go with these drug convictions. And those who would eventually go to prison had to really try hard to go to prison for that.
To expand on that, I think in some of our homeless drug cases, it's up to 15 calls and 15 misdemeanors before they're actually pushed into an access program. I think that has some to do with the emergency bail reduction on the Second Amendment post-COVID. And I think that's where they're not even seeing the word jail, is they're getting stuck.
Well, there's several reasons for that. The question was about how many recurrent offenses have to occur. Statutorily, to be brought to my custody for committing a misdemeanor is very, very narrowly defined. So Prop 47, if you committed a felony in 2013 of possession of heroin, you came to my jail and potentially could go to prison. And we had that felony carrot to dangle in front of people to entice them into treatment, into programs, to hopefully get them to change their ways. Post Prop 47, that no longer exists. And to come to my jail, you can't come to my jail for a misdemeanor. Now you get written a ticket that says, please show up in court in 30 days. And the sentencing changes significantly. It's based on this premise that if we didn't criminalize drug addiction like it was prior to Prop 47, people would naturally find their own way into treatment and do it on their own. Well, we know that's not happening. So everything that was projected to occur in Prop 47 did not. We are being irreparably harmed as a community. The largest social science experiment we've ever conducted in California. The efforts of Sacramento. If we did any one of these legislative missions, if we did all of them in one calendar year or one legislative year, people go crazy. But incrementally over time, they've all been implemented, oftentimes mislabeled on the ballot, and we're seeing the effects of it. So looking back to the state prison system being overcrowded, it's mass decarceration coupled with mass decriminalization, which is now manifested into mass victimization. Doesn't matter if you have a D or an R next to your name, people are being victimized equally across the state, and people are getting tired. We know that because San Francisco just outed their district attorney by a majority vote in a county that's 90% Democrat. When you get to that level of frustration and intolerance, that's the beginning of the shift that's happening in California. But I want to caution you, that pendulum oftentimes swings 180 degrees side to side. You need to find some common ground to swing it into the middle and have tempered approach so don't have other harms as we go back and forth and make sure we have a good strategy to deal with these things.
We are right at 9, but I know Pat has a question, so very good.
Mine's not a question.
Okay.
Mine is a thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Mine is to say thank you for the excellent personnel you put out. I have the opportunity of Belinda and Bill are both watched over by the sheriff's department.
Nice.
Thank you.
And the people that come in and getting, I want to call them captains, but I think
There's a captain that runs Belinda,
Okay.
yes.
they are fabulous to work with, and that is a reflection on you and the way you run.
Well, I will tell you, thank you for that compliment, Pat, but it's not me. I'm blessed. I get to work with phenomenal people every day. I'll go back to a comment I made earlier. My responsibility is create an environment for people to be successful. I can't make them happy. I can create an environment where they feel supported. I call it the 3 T's. Give them the tools to do the job, give them the training to do the job, trust them to do their job and get out of the way. I'm going to give you one quick example of where I think this is important. If you look at the Geneva Presbyterian Church 2 years ago, the active shooter we had at the church, and then just last year at Cook's Corner in Tribugo Canyon. And you may not know this, and I say this because 3 weeks after the Presbyterian Church Uvalde happened, we've been talking about the failure of Uvalde for the last year and a half and focused on failure. We don't look at things that work. So I'm going to give you, I'm not picking on the Uvalde Police Department. They probably did not have the things that we have here, and that's an injustice for them. But second one in 911 comes out, active shooter inside the Presbyterian Church. 13 deputies responded upon that church, converged on it. They put on their tactical gear that I provided for them. They got their long rifle platforms we trained them with, put on their Kevlar helmet we have, used their breaching tools that I give to them, formulated a hazy plan that they've trained on. That means getting a diamond formation and forcing entry into the facility. And the second one in 911, to getting into that facility, cutting a lock, getting in, and getting the individual in handcuffs under 4 minutes. Compared to Uvalde, right, or Parkland, and then we replicated that again last year in Tribugo Canyon, where our deputies were there in under 2 minutes, and then engaged in an 8-minute firefight with this individual. Eventually, he succumbed to his injuries. I'm not trying to be a braggart, but I know what works and what we should be doing, and what I talk to our federal partners about. Stop focusing on the failures, the Parklands and the Uvaldes. Why don't we focus on programs, policies, strategies, tactics that we know work, and start emulating and training to that as a national model? That's where we should be going. And I had the attention of FBI recently when I talked about this. I think we're going to start looking at, in the state, we're sponsoring legislation with Tom Lackey. Mm-hmm. Ray and I are working on it because he had some issues about Uvalde and is focused on what went wrong. My response was, that's not going to work. Let's focus on what went right. And as a platform in the state, legislatively require police departments to do what we've been doing for decades. 2 decades of training for 4 minutes of gameplay. And it works. So we should be doing that as a national model, because we know these things are not going to stop. We've seen them perpetuate year to year, but we can save lives if we have a better strategy in how we respond to them. And with that, I'll stop talking. I know you all have to get to work.
I appreciate the answers. Before we let you go, just a couple things if you have time.
Sure.
So I do have, I guess, a bit of a fun question.
All right.
So we noticed that your equestrian team was in the Tournament of Roses parade this year, and they were amazing. And we have our May parade coming up, May 4th. We'd love to invite you, and it's an invitation to the team to join us in that parade.
That would be incredible. We have a very robust team. Let me tell you a little bit of history on our mounting unit. And this goes back to my predecessor, Sheriff Sandra Hutchins, who was a phenomenal leader, best boss I've ever had. And I've had good bosses. And she became a very good personal friend. We lost her 3 years ago. But post-2008, when we're all going through our economic decline, and we had to cut tens of millions of dollars of services out of the Sheriff's Department. And we got to the point that we were looking at the mounting unit. And it's not a big unit, and it's not really robust, but it has a cost associated with it. And that was one that was on the chopping block. And I remember Sheriff Hutchins sitting in her chair and saying, you know what? If there's one thing sheriffs have a history of, it's horses.
Yes.
We're not getting rid of the horses. And she just drew the line at the horses. So we retain them. They are highly trained. They're part of our mobile field force teams. They handle mass protests and other things, have some great outcomes with them. I will make sure that we do our best to make them be there. And I would love to attend if I'm available. I can't guarantee.
I'd love to have you there.
But we'll love to be able to come.
May 4th, put it on your calendar.
Yes, can't forget that. May the 4th be with you. Right?
Yes, yes.
Star Wars Day.
Yeah, it'll be really
I think
fun.
I'm more of a Darth Vader type.
Hey, you're tall enough to pull it off. Just don't scare us that day.
I've heard people tell me I'm pretty intimidating, which I think is hilarious. I think I'm just the funniest guy on the planet. But
Oh, that's funny. Well, thank you so much for joining
welcome.
us. We
Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
you. We appreciate your time. I have a couple quick announcements. Very, very quickly. First of all, we have the annual report. We did not get to cover this today, but the Sheriff's Department has brought these for you, so please grab them before you leave. So we have these here. We have B&G first and third Wednesdays. Next meeting is April 3rd at Zito's Pizza. We have a mixer that's going to be on Thursday at 5 p.m. at Lutheran Social Services of Southern California. Ribbon cuttings between now and the next Eggs and Issues. We have April 2nd, South Coast Ice. April 4th, Restoration Dental. April 11th, Tiddlywinks Toys and Games. We have our first Happy Mob, and I don't have enough time to describe it. Just know that it's fun, know that it's networking, and know that you should be there. The next one, or the first one's going to be tomorrow at noon at Smoked Barbecue. Other chamber news, on April 9th, we have a screen printing class at Casa Lula, which would be so much fun. And our next Eggs and Issues will be here on the third week of the month for Orange County Supervisor Vince Sarmiento. Thank you so much, Sean, Nina, this morning. Breakfast was amazing. As always, thank you so much to our Chairman Circle sponsors, our members, our board of directors, our staff. Thank you, Sheriff Barnes.
thanks for having me. Appreciate
We'll
being
see
here.
you guys next month.
Thank you. Thank you very much.